Hi, I'm Mr. Miyagi, and this is Mr. Miyagi's Workshop. Well, this week we're going to be working on a 1973 Honda CB350. Now, it's a basket case right now. I mean, it's all apart. I'm going to have to figure out how everything goes back together. Got the motor here, head, bits and pieces. I've got another box over here of pistons and bolts and such. So it's going to be a fun little series. Now, we're going to turn this into a cafe, so we're going to do it in stages. Right now, I'm going to work on the motor, and I have to start cleaning these parts up. Now, I've done a little bit, like on the top cover, but the head and the rocker and the cam cover, I mean, this stuff is horrible right now. So we're going to go through all of that on this little series here on this CB350. And so let's get to it. Okay, this is the next day. Actually, it's the next afternoon. I ended up having some stuff to do on the house. We had a problem with our heater, so anyway, I'm back on to cleaning this up. I don't know if you're interested in watching me do this, but I'll do a little bit over here and show you how I kind of get some of this stuff cleaned up. So anyway, let's move over to my cleaning area. This is another thing I was doing yesterday too, as I was getting our generators so they would run properly one pull, and that Mrs. Miyagi could fire them up if I'm not around. So anyway, plus our chainsaws. Putting on my shop jacket and some gloves, and changed out my white cap to this old welder's. I'm going to be making some mess over here. So we're going to get to it here in a second. All right. So this turned out pretty good. Cleaned it up nicely. Now, I'm going to go about and do all the rest of the parts that need to be cleaned. And then I may end up painting this. I don't know yet. I haven't made up my mind yet. I could spend some time polishing this out, or I could just paint over it and be good to go. I still have to clean out in this crevices and stuff with all the loose particles and stuff that I've knocked loose. Now, using those wire wheels, you want to definitely be wearing some protection on your face, because they do, the spindles do come out, and I don't know if I've got one. I felt a couple of them hit me. But anyway, I'm going to not bore you anymore, but I'm going to get to cleaning all this stuff up, and then we'll get back to talking. All right? All right, well, I got a lot of these parts over here all cleaned up. I've got the cylinder and the cam case, or the cam holder and rocker box, whatever you want to call it, side covers, some odds and ends there. But I'm going to clean up, start to clean this head up a little bit here. And what I want to do first, before I'm going to pop the valves out of it, before I do that, I want to clean up these little cylinders. And I do have, you know, like these wire brushes here. These seem to work quite well. And it's kind of nice to do this with the valve still in place, because it helps clean those up too. It get a lot of that out of there. We go to a smaller one here. So there is some carbon built up, like on these intakes here, and the exhausts aren't too bad, but this one intake's got a little bit on it. And since it's all still in the head, but this helps with it being held in place like this. It makes it a little bit easier to clean that carbon off there. All right, so I'm gonna take these valves out, pull everything out of here, and I've got a little thing I make up here, you know, for where I can exhaust valve, intake valve, left and right, right and left, you know, that kind of thing. I don't think this bike was really ridden all that hard. Of course, it hadn't been ran probably for about 15 years. It just sat, and it sat outside, believe it or not. But I want to get this out of here. I can clean this head all up, clean out these exhaust ports. Yeah, that stuff's all pretty crusted. That is an exhaust gasket still stuck down in there. So I'm gonna pop these loose. Okay, we're getting the last one out here. These little valve compressors work really nice. This is a set I got years ago, and it works like a champ. Now what I'm doing is I'm bagging each one of these up, and I'm marking them which valve it came off of. The valves are out, and they actually look pretty good. I'm going to end up just lapping these in after I clean all this carbon and everything up on them. But like I said, this is the board I built. It's really simple. It just drilled a couple holes, 4 holes, and marked them on where I've pulled them out. So now I'll finish cleaning this head up. I may get down inside here and like in the exhaust area and get that carbon and everything out of there. I'm gonna get to cleaning this up, and then we get ready to put this head back together. I'll show you how I lap everything in. But meanwhile, I'm gonna go clean the valves up, this head, all these surfaces areas. All right, I got the head all cleaned up. I've already lapped in the right-hand side, and I was going to show you how I lap in valves on this left-hand side. This is an exhaust valve that I pulled out, which is pretty clean. So what I use is just some valve grinding compound, and you just want to take it and roll it around in there so you get a nice even coat on that edge. And another thing I like to do is I like to put a little bit of lubricant on there when I put the shaft in, or the stem of the valve in through the valve guide. And one reason is just because you're spinning it, and it helps lubricate that area. Now there's a couple of traditional ways you can do it. I mean, you could do it with one of these tools here, where you just run them back and forth, and what they do is it suctions on there, but sometimes they don't stay on the valve that well. So what I do is I find some tubing that fits the stem fairly tight, and then I mount it onto my drill. And then I just shove that down on there. Let me get my finger on there. Shove it on the stem of the valve there, up pretty tight. And then you can sit and just do this. Now what you want to do is you want to go in and out on it, because what that does is it takes that valve grinding compound and moves it around a little bit. So this is what I do. Now I don't know if you can hear that little grab on it, but it's grabbing in on the surfaces. So I'll do this several times back and forth, and I go forward and I go into reverse on my drill. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get that surface of the valve smooth so that it actually fits the seat in the head proper. On the right-hand side, those valves actually were in pretty good shape. And this side here is pretty good too. So we'll pull it out. And another thing you want to keep in mind is you don't want to get any of that valve grinding compound on the stem, because it'll eat the hell out of your valve guide, and that's not good. So we'll wipe this down a little bit here, and you can see that's actually pretty darn good. It's got a good surface, got a good clean cut area all the way around. So what I will do is I will clean this valve off, and I use a little bit of that cleaner. I just use some of that brake cleaner stuff, and then I'll wipe that down along with the stem to make sure that that's good and clean. Yeah, that looks really good. It's good and clean all the way around. So okay, that will go into its slot. So now we'll want to wipe that compound out of this to take a good look at this. Oh yeah, so that surface in there is even all the way around, and that looks really good. So that'll be a good seating exhaust valve. So we'll do the same thing to the intake. Now you can buy this compound pretty much anywhere. Any auto parts store should have the valve grinding compound. So once again, we want to lubricate that stem, and then we'll take our special attachment here, shove it onto the end of the stem, and you want to make sure it's all the way up on there. Now they'll slip and slide a little bit. All right, we're going to have to make up another one. Because what happens is a little bit of oil or whatever gets on these and they don't work as good. So I'll cut another piece off for myself. And you just have to look for some tubing that fits that stem fairly tight. And then I'll shove it on there. Can you hear that over the drill, that cutting sound of what that's doing is it's grinding that seat, and they're blending together, the valve itself and the seat. All right, that feels pretty good. Now sometimes you have to do these for a fairly extended period of time to make sure that you're cutting off any problem areas on the valve itself. I've been kind of impressed with this motor since it had sat for so long. It had been sitting outside. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Good even gray all the way around, and same way here, a good even coat all the way around. So that surface is it's just solid gray all the way. There's no breaks in it or anything. I'm going to spray this down a little bit. And then we'll wipe it out. I'll clean this head several different times before I put the valves in. But there you have it. Now what I'm going to end up doing now is that I'm going to have to set this all up for painting. And I'm going to paint the head and all those parts and everything. We still have to break down the motor and open it up and clean it out because I want to go through and double check everything on it. So this turned out pretty good. Cleaned it up nicely. Now I'm going to go about and do all the rest of the parts that need to be cleaned, and this crevices and stuff with all the loose particles and stuff that I've knocked loose. Now, using those wire wheels, you want to definitely be wearing some protection on your face. Anyway, I'm going to not bore you anymore, but I'm going to get to cleaning all this stuff up, and then we'll get back to talking. All right? Okay, today we are going to pull all this stuff out so we can get to the crank and everything. Now, you really don't have to do a lot of this pulling, but I'm going to take this stuff off just to make sure that everything is okay. So, in order to get this off the rotor here, that worked. All right. All right, I had to run down to the hardware. I had one for the 360, but I didn't have one for the 350, which is a little different. This is a 14 millimeter for the 360, and this is a 16 millimeter for the 350. And it's a 1.5 thread on it. And for $3 is what I paid for that bolt. There. You could pull it all apart and boom, boom, boom. One of the reasons I wanted to take this apart is I wanted to check all these paws on this starter clutch mechanism, just to make sure that they're all working proper. Part of it is sometimes what happens is these springs get weak and they don't work properly. Yeah, what happens is when this spins, rollers, I guess, lock onto this wheel and then turn the engine over. So now that we've got all that out of the way, I'm going to take the sprocket off. These are pretty simple. Now this is a little neutral switch. Right here is a little neutral switch that I want to remove. It also has a bracket, I believe, for the wiring harness to hook onto. But we'll get it out of there. All that stuff just kind of comes off. Now there's another spot back in here. So we'll roll it a little bit. Also, you know, what's funny is this stand, I built this for the 360 Honda, and it works on the 350. So that's kind of nice. One of the little work jobs I'm going to have to do right here is the front motor mounts broke. And I'm going to end up having to weld that all up. But we won't do that until we get this thing apart. There we go. Stabilized. So I'm going to pull all the rest of this stuff off of here. Another reason why I'm pulling this clutch apart is because over time these clutch plates will stick together. See that? They're all stuck together. Now I've got a little video out on how to break them loose when they're in the bike, but now that they're out, I can take them apart, clean them, and make sure everything is good. So we have a little snap ring here that we got to remove. One thing I did buy is I bought one of these little tools for getting this nut off in here, and once I get it out of there, I'll show you exactly what we're talking about. What I've found in the past that people have used screwdrivers or chisels to get that nut off of there. when all you really need is to spend a little extra money, and then it's easier to put it on or take it off. And you can see here where somebody's just beat the heck out of it. I'll straighten it out, make it work. There's a little keeper down in here that they never pried up the bars on. It was just stuck down in here. So what I'm talking about is that this little item here fits against some grooves inside, and then you can bend these tabs up, but I'll straighten that all out later. Okay, so I'm also going to pull the oil pump out. It has some tabs here that lock the bolts in place. So in order to get the clutch basket off, you definitely have to pull the oil pump, because there's a little piston in here that apparently that's what pumps the oil. We'll take all the shift mechanism apart. This is pretty standard from everything else. These just pull out. There's your shift rod on the other side. We're going to go around and loosen up all these bolts. Now there are two bolts on the top side up there, these two long ones towards the back, that you must take off in order to get this apart. We're going through and loosening up all of the 10 millimeter. And then we'll go to the 12. That looks to be all of the bolts. So what we have here is we have a series, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 millimeters and 4 12 meters, it looks like here, with washers and stuff on. I'm using a drift here. This is a piece of aluminum that I've got. I'm just tapping this on thick areas where, there. What I've got going on here is this seal is not allowing me to loosen this up right at the moment. Want to be careful if you're using a screwdriver on these cases, that you don't mar that surface. Let me see if I can pop that down. There it goes. There we go. So there, the case is off, the bottom part. What I'm going to do now, I still have to remove these 4 bolts that hold the crank in place, but I'm going to remove the transmission mount. So this is your push rod that goes through the shaft, which operates the clutch. And I'm going to pull out these seals. Now we're going to end up replacing all of these seals that we have here. I got a kit for that. So I'm going to lift this. Well, first off, I think I'll take this outer seal off here. Well, I got a chance. So we're going to lift this up out of there. And they just come out. I have this in neutral so that we could find everything again. I'm going to place those. I have a container over here where I'm going to put all this stuff into. And it should just come out of there. There we go, it lifts right out. These also have like little half moon spacers that go in here that hold that gear from sliding back and forth. On this one here, what we have is that you have a little notch right in there, or a little divot that goes onto this little spot down there. I don't know if you can make that out, but there's a little raised pin there that fits into that little hole right there. Well, let's remove this crankshaft, and that is 12 millimeter. All right. I'm going to mark this with a little mark so that I know that it faces this way. So I'm just going to put in a couple of small divots, 3, so that I know, and then I will mark here on the case 3 divots. I just do this so that I know I'm going to put this back. I don't know if it's different. Sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. But I'm not taking the chance because that's the way I know it. So I just put 3 little marks here, little divots, and then 3 right here. So that all lines up. Now this also should have some way of, yeah, there it lifted out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the shifter paw. It has a spring and everything on here. You want to be able to slip this out. So this has a spring, and it has this little collar that goes up inside. So let's put that in its own little bag. Now, in order to remove the shifting drums, you have to remove the retainers on the forks themselves. These little retainers, these little clips, have to come off. And I'll show you here just in a minute why. Because what they do is they hold in a little pin on each of them that rides in the shaft itself. So we have to pull those little pins out. Now I just removed the one fork area, and the way I've done this is I've turned the fork sideways and then flipped the case upside down, putting my hand underneath of it and wiggling that fork back and forth a little bit, and they'll fall right out. So there's the pin. Now we'll get the other one. There we go. And they just fall right out. Let's put these in a safe spot. I'm going to put these into a bag. One thing you have to do is you have to remove the lock for the shifting drum, which is on the top here. And that should have a little spring and everything in it. This all locks in, holds everything kind of in place. There's also a ball bearing down in there. You don't want to lose it. So let's reach in there and get it. There's the ball bearing. Also, I wanted to say, don't forget there's a half moon clip on this side, and then there's another one on the opposite side over here on your drive side where the sprocket is. So don't lose those. Otherwise everything comes apart. Now we should be able just to push that drum out, and then these come right off. The shifting forks come right off. Keep these in order, and that slides right out. So there's your shifting drum. And there's your shifting fork. Now these forks and everything look really good. Let me point out something here. What you want to look for is this area right here where there's worn spot. There's a little bit of wearing here and there on it, but that's pretty much natural. See, this one looks really good too. That's the center one. And that's not too bad. It's just this one shifting fork that has a little bit of wear in here. But we'll double check the bearings and everything on the trans parts just to make sure everything is good. So there's your drum and everything. Pretty simple. Those little pins just ride in there, and that's how they move the forks, which move the gears back and forth to put it in whatever gear you want. Okay, now that I've got this stripped down, I can clean it, check everything over, paint it, and get it ready to reassemble again. And we do the same thing with the bottom one, but the bottom case we have to repair one of the motor mounts. So apparently there's no way to remove the splash shield. These are looks like there were little studs that came up and then they flattened them out over these areas. So I'm not real sure why they even put these screws in. But anyway, I can't pull this out without doing some major work, and I'm just going to have to figure out how I can clean out the bottom half. I'll just probably run fluid in there and make sure it flushes out clean. So this is some of the painting that I got done. The shifter cover, upper part of the case. And I've got the head ready to go. Put the valves back in there. The rocker cover is ready to have all the rockers put back into place. I've got the front stator cover painted. This is for the oil. And of course the cylinder head we went with a different color altogether. And then I'll show you what I've got going over here. So this is the lower case that had a broken motor mount. So I'm going to try and fix that. So I found a piece. It's a fairly large piece. It fits this fairly well. I used this other side here to kind of make the pattern I need. So when I go to weld this back in there, it'll be pretty darn close. So you see here, I've got it kind of roughed in. I'm not sure what I want to do. This actually had a hole in it that I didn't realize. And I'm almost thinking of taking this and squaring this area off on both sides and then cutting that piece to fit that. I've gotten this piece kind of cut, and I'll have that bolt in place there to make sure everything is. So now I've got some filling in to do, and I'm going to have to taper a couple of these edges, but I think that'll work out just fine. That didn't turn out too bad. So I've got to surface this area on this side and on that side there, but that should be pretty skookum for now. I don't think it'll get busted, but you never know. So got the finished product here, and I'm going to take this upstairs and see if it fits the frame like it should, but it's looking pretty good. So that kind of ends this week on dismantling the engine and getting it prepped and painted and repaired in places. So next week we can start putting everything back together again. So if there's any questions or comments, you can put them in the comment section below, or you can send them to my email address at tmiyagi@hotmail.com. And if you've liked this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget that ringy D button over there for the next episode coming up. So this is Mr. Miyagi saying, you be safe out there. Hope to see you on the road. Ciao.